A racist waitress dumps water on a black elderly woman in a crowded diner, thinking it's just another bad day and she'll get away with it. But within hours, her face is all over the internet. The world's calling her a monster. And then, motorcycles roar into her trailer park. The leader steps off, towering and silent. His voice, cold as steel. You poured water on my mama. Now, instead of revenge, he gives her something far worse, a second chance. Forced to work at a charity kitchen run by the woman she humiliated, the waitress comes face to face with the very people she used to judge. But as she begins to change, the past comes back, darker than before. Old sins resurface. The town turns again. And forgiveness might cost her everything. What happens when the woman you shamed becomes the only one who can save your soul? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. The alarm clock screamed before sunrise, its shrill beep echoing through the paper-thin walls of the small trailer. Amber Lee groaned and smacked it quiet. Her arm flopped back onto the mattress like a tired fish. She'd only slept a few hours. Again. The heater had gone out during the night, so the morning air felt sharp as ice. Amber shoved her feet into old sneakers and stumbled toward the kitchen, rubbing her face. The sink dripped, the fridge hummed, and the whole place smelled faintly of burned toast from yesterday. She pulled open the fridge door, just half a carton of milk, a bottle of ketchup, and 1 egg. "Ethan," she called down the narrow hall, "you're gonna miss the bus again." A boy's groggy voice came from the back bedroom. 5 minutes. Amber sighed. Her little brother always said 5 minutes, and it always turned into 15. She cracked the lone egg into a skillet, watching it sizzle, her stomach growling. When she flipped it onto a piece of stale bread, she decided Ethan could eat it. She wasn't hungry enough to fight him for it. Bills cluttered the counter, each one stamped in red. Past due. She ran a finger over the top envelope. Rent. Mr. Keaton, their landlord, had already threatened eviction twice. She'd promised to pay last Friday, but tips had been bad all week. Ethan shuffled out, backpack hanging off one shoulder. "Morning," he mumbled. "Eat up," she said, sliding the makeshift sandwich onto a plate. "You already eat?" he asked, suspicious. Amber forced a smile. "Yeah, go on before that bus honks." He grabbed the sandwich and darted out the door. When the trailer fell quiet again, Amber poured herself a mug of weak instant coffee and stared at her reflection in the window. Dark circles under her eyes. Blonde hair pulled back in a careless ponytail, the face of someone trying too hard to keep it together. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Marty, her boss at the Magnolia Diner. "Be on time today. We're short-staffed. And don't roll your eyes at customers this time." Amber snorted, took a sip of coffee and muttered, "Yeah, sure, boss." Then she pulled on her jacket, locked up, and stepped into the biting morning air. By 9 a.m., the Magnolia Diner was bursting with chatter and the smell of bacon grease. Amber tied her apron tight and grabbed her notepad. The regulars were already there. The old men at the counter arguing about football, the truckers nursing black coffee, and the church ladies in the corner booth whispering about everyone who wasn't them. "Amber, table 4 needs menus," Marty barked from the kitchen window. "I'm on it," she said through clenched teeth. She plastered on a fake smile and hurried across the floor. Her co-worker, Tanya, all smiles and sunshine, whispered as Amber passed, "You okay today, hon? You look tired." Amber brushed it off. "I'm fine. Just don't feel like talking." It was one of those days where everything went wrong at once. A kid spilled orange juice on the floor. A man complained his pancakes were too flat. Marty yelled every 5 minutes. By the time lunch rolled around, Amber's head throbbed. Then the bell above the diner door jingled, and in walked an elderly black woman, small and elegant, wearing a lilac sweater and a gentle smile. She carried herself with grace, though her back was a little bent with age. Amber barely looked up. "Just one today?" Amber asked, her tone clipped. "Yes, dear. Thank you," the woman replied softly. Amber led her to a booth near the window and slapped a menu on the table. "Someone will be right with you," she said, walking off before the woman could answer. 15 minutes later, Marty's voice boomed. "Amber, table 7 says she's been waiting." Amber rolled her eyes, grabbed her notepad, and stomped back over. "What can I get you?" The woman smiled politely. "Just coffee and a slice of apple pie, please. And could you warm the pie a little?" "Sure." Amber scribbled it down. As she turned, the woman said kindly, "You look tired, honey. You okay?" Amber froze for half a second, something inside her twitching. "I'm fine," she said sharply. "Just a long day." When the pie came up from the kitchen, Amber carried it over along with the coffee pot. But as she leaned to pour, her elbow brushed the edge of the table. The cup tipped, splashing a few drops onto the woman's sleeve. "Oh dear," the woman said, dabbing it gently with a napkin. "It's okay, sugar. No harm done." But something in Amber snapped. The laughter from the counter, the sting of Marty's voice, the weight of her bills, all of it boiled over. "Yeah, well, maybe next time you don't complain about waiting," she snapped. "I didn't complain," the woman said, voice calm but surprised. The diner went quiet. The old men turned. Marty looked out from the kitchen window. Amber felt the heat of eyes on her and pride twisted into her chest. She picked up the metal pitcher, icy water dripping from its sides, and poured it right over the woman's lap. Gasps filled the diner. Someone shouted, "What the hell?" The woman sat still, water pooling around her, eyes wide but peaceful. Slowly, she stood, adjusting her sweater. "God bless you, child," she said softly, then turned and walked out. Amber's heart pounded as silence swallowed the room. Then someone's phone clicked. A teenager near the door had filmed the whole thing. Marty stormed out, face red. "What were you thinking, Amber?" She dropped the pitcher, backing away. I don't know, Get out of my diner, now." Amber grabbed her purse and bolted. Outside, the sun felt too bright. She sat in her old car, hands shaking on the steering wheel. She'd messed up before, sure, but not like this. By evening, the video was everywhere. On Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, her face, frozen mid-pour, captioned, "Waitress attacks elderly woman over coffee." The comments burned. "Disgusting human being. She should be fired. What's wrong with people like her?" Ethan called from his friend's phone. "Amber, what's going on? People at school are talking about you." "Don't worry about it," she said, trying to sound calm. "It's nothing." But when she hung up, she saw it again. The woman's calm eyes, the quiet words. "God bless you, child." Amber buried her face in her hands and cried until the sky turned black. Amber woke to the buzz of her phone like a fly trapped in a jar. It came from the cracked screen on her nightstand, rattling against a chipped mug. She blinked at the ceiling of the trailer, dull gray in the early light. Her head felt stuffed with cotton. For a second, she did not remember why her chest hurt. Then the memory came back fast and sharp. The water, the gasp, the calm eyes of the old woman, the phone held up by a kid near the door. She reached for the phone. Notifications covered the screen like falling rain. Pings, dings, and vibrating lines stacked in a long, unbroken stream. She slid her finger across the glass and opened one at random. There she was, frozen in an ugly pose, jaw tight, arm raised, water tipping out of a metal pitcher. A caption sat across the bottom. Racist waitress dumps water on black elderly woman. The video had a red banner from a local news site and a big number that made her mouth go dry. 432,917 views. She refreshed. It jumped by 10,000. Amber pushed herself upright. No. The next ping came from a friend she had not seen since high school. Girl, what did you do? After that, you're on the news. Delete your accounts. You're finished. Someone else wrote, hope you lose your job. A stranger added a knife of a comment. Trash? Her heart thudded. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and felt for the floor with her toes. The carpet was cold and thin. In the next room, the cheap heater clanked and tried to turn on, then fell silent. She could hear Ethan's soft snore through the wall. She stumbled into the tiny bathroom and stared at herself. Puffy eyes, blotchy cheeks, hair going wild from sleep. She splashed water on her face and braced her hands on the sink. The mirror showed a woman she barely knew. Hard lines she did not remember earning. A mouth set for a fight she did not want. Her phone kept buzzing on the counter. She scrolled some more and saw the video again, posted by a bigger page this time. Someone had slowed it down in sick detail. She winced as the water arched through the air. I messed up, she whispered. It came out thin. I messed up so bad. She heard a small knock and Ethan's voice. You up? Yeah, she said, wiping her face with a towel. I'm up. He opened the door an inch and peeked in, his brown hair stuck up in wild spikes. My phone blew up. People at school they're saying things. I know, she said. She tried to smile. It felt like a crack in plaster. Eat breakfast, okay? I'll walk you to the bus. There was almost nothing in the kitchen. She poured him the last of the cereal dust and shook the milk carton until a few white drops hit the flakes. He tried not to make a face. It's fine, he said. I can get something at school. She nudged the bowl toward him anyway. Eat a little. He sat and ate the dry crumbs with a spoon, glancing at her phone lighting up again and again on the table. Are you going to work? I don't know, she said. Then she did know. She sighed. Yeah, I need to go in. He set the spoon down. Are you okay? She nodded too fast. I'm fine. He rose and slipped his backpack over one shoulder. At the door, he paused. You're still my sister, he said, so quiet it almost got lost in the hum of the fridge. No matter what people say. Tears sprang up and surprised her. She swallowed them back and pulled him into a quick hug. Go on. Bus is coming. They stepped outside into thin winter sun. Their breath showed in little puffs. The bus growled at the corner. Ethan jogged to catch it, turning once to wave. She waved back and stood there until the bus vanished. Then she took a breath that hurt and went back inside for her keys. The Magnolia Diner sign flickered when she pulled in. A few cars lined the lot. Amber parked at the edge, hands clenched around the wheel. She could just drive away. She could pretend this place did not exist. But rent and groceries and her brother's shoes all whispered the same word. Work. She got out and walked toward the door, heads turned the second she stepped in. Conversations dropped off like someone had hit a switch. The air smelled of bacon grease and burned coffee. The bell over the door sounded too bright. Marty stood behind the counter, arms crossed, lips pressed flat. Did not shout. He did not have to. He jerked his head toward the back hallway. She followed him past the pie case and the humming soda machine, down to the office with the crooked blinds. He shut the door with more care than she expected and leaned against the metal filing cabinet. On the desk lay a printed picture of her mid-pour. I can't have you here, he said. Her mouth had already formed the word sorry, and now it fell out small and useless. Marty, I know. I know I messed up. I'll apologize to her. I'll do it right. It's out of my hands." He tapped the picture with one finger. "This is everywhere. I got reporters calling. I got folks threatening to boycott. I got old man Parker saying he'll never bring the church ladies again, and you know that group fills half the room on Sundays." "I'll make a statement," she said. "You're fired, Amber." The word landed like a door slamming in a storm. She stared at him. "I need this job." "I need a business," he said. "Turn in your apron." She untied the apron with trembling fingers and laid it on the desk. He would not meet her eyes. For a second, she hated him more than she hated herself. Then she only felt empty. She walked out through the kitchen. Tanya stood by the grill with a spatula in hand. Their eyes met. Tanya's smile did not reach her eyes. "Sorry," Tanya said. It sounded like the kind of sorry you say when the weather turns bad. Amber didn't answer. She pushed through the back door into cold air and stood by the dumpster, trying to breathe. Her phone buzzed again. She looked down. A new message from an unknown number. "We saw what you did. You deserve worse." Another followed. "Watch your back." Then one more. "Die." Her throat closed. She bent and braced her hands on her knees. She had thought she knew ugly. She was wrong. She wiped her face on her sleeve, climbed into her car, and drove home. All the way, she felt eyes watching from other cars, imagined whispers forming at red lights. By the time she reached the trailer park, her hands hurt from gripping the wheel. Mr. Keaton stood by her steps, a heavy jacket over his belly and a manila folder in his hand. He tilted his head toward her phone as she walked up. "You made the news." "I'll have rent by Friday," she said. She hated the way her voice shook. "You said Friday last Friday." He held out a paper. 3-day notice, then I file." "Please," she said softer. I just lost my job." "That's not my concern," he said. "You pay or you go." He started away, then turned back. "And keep things quiet. I don't want trouble on my property." She took the paper and sat on the steps after he left. The thin wood was cold and rough under her. She watched a white cat cross the road and head under a neighbor's porch. Her phone buzzed in her lap. She turned it over so the screen faced down. Inside, she poured water into a pot for cheap noodles and set it on the stove. The burner clicked and finally caught flame. She stood and watched the water, wanting it to boil fast, wanting something, anything, to obey. A sharp knock rattled the door. She jumped, heart in her throat. She peeked through the shade. 2 police officers stood on the steps, hats low, faces unreadable. She opened the door a few inches. "Yes?" "Ma'am," the taller one said. "We're responding to reports of online threats made against you. We also need to speak about safety concerns at your place of work." "I don't work there anymore," she said. He nodded. "Understood. Mind if we come in for a moment?" She let them inside and pushed a pile of mail off the small table. The shorter officer glanced around the cramped space, the sink full of dishes, the couch with a rip in the cushion, the pair of men's work boots by the door that had belonged to their father and never got thrown out. "Have you received any threats directly?" the tall one asked. Amber swallowed. "Yes." She showed them the messages. "People also posted my address. I don't know how they got it." "That happens," he said, not unkind. "We recommend you lock your doors, keep the curtains closed for a bit, and avoid engaging online. If you see anyone hanging around, call us." The shorter officer cleared his throat. "We also need the name of the woman involved, if you know it." "I don't," she said, shame heating her cheeks. "I never asked her name." They thanked her, left a card, and stepped back outside. Through the window, she watched them speak to a neighbor, then walk to their cruiser. The engine hummed, then faded as they pulled away. The water boiled over. She turned off the burner and stood, lost, as steam fogged the window. Her phone rang then. Not a ping, not a ding, an old-school ring. She flinched and picked up without looking at the number. "Amber Lee?" a woman said. "Yes. This is Channel 9. We'd like to interview you about the incident. It's a chance to tell your side." Amber stared at the sink, at the greasy plate someone had left 3 days ago, and she had not washed. "I don't think that's a good idea." "It could help," the woman pressed. "People want to know who you are." "I don't even know who I am," Amber said, and surprised herself with the truth in it. She hung up. She took the pot off the stove, drained it, and split the noodles into 2 bowls for later. Her stomach rolled at the thought of eating. She set one on the table with a note for Ethan. "Microwave this. Love you." Then she sank onto the couch with a groan and pulled a blanket over her knees. Afternoon slid by. The light through the shade turned from white to weak yellow. She dozed and woke to the scrape of a bike outside and some kids yelling, then slept a little more. Each time she woke, she checked her phone even though she did not want to. The video had crossed 1 million views. More comments poured in. Some said she should be jailed. Some called her names she had never seen. One message came from a church lady she recognized from the diner. "We are praying for you." She stared at that one for a long time, not sure whether to laugh or cry. At 3, Ethan called from school. "Can you pick me up? There's a group by the bus stop. They were talking about you." "I'll be there in 10, she said. She grabbed her keys, pulled on a jacket, and stepped outside into a thin wind. A shadow fell over the trailer for a second as a cloud moved across the sun. She locked the door and double-checked it. At the school, she found Ethan waiting under the awning with his hood up. He slid into the passenger seat and buckled fast. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm fine." He looked small in the seat. "Some guys said stuff. I didn't respond." "Good," she said. Then, "I'm sorry." He stared out the window. "Are you going to apologize to the woman?" "Yes," she said. It came out with a weight that surprised her. "I have to." They drove home with the radio off. A local station cut to the news and she snapped it off with a stiff finger. When they reached the park, she saw paper taped to their door. Her stomach clenched. Another notice? She hurried up the steps and plucked it free. It was a printout of the viral photo with "Get Out" scrawled across it in black marker. Ethan stood behind her, reading over her shoulder. He looked up, face pale. "Who did that?" "I don't know," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. She folded the paper and shoved it into the trash bin by the steps. "Come inside." They ate in silence at the small table, the microwave humming and then beeping in the quiet. The noodles tasted like wet cardboard. Ethan pushed his bowl away after a few bites. "I'm not hungry," he said. "Can I do homework in my room?" "Yeah," she said. "Go ahead." He rose, then stopped at her chair. "I know you're not a monster," he said, eyes bright. "You did a bad thing, but you're not a bad person." Her throat tightened. "Thank you." He hugged her quick and hurried down the hall. Evening came early. Wind rose and rattled the aluminum siding. Somewhere a dog barked and would not stop. Amber washed dishes and wiped the counter, then stood in the middle of the small kitchen because she did not know what to do next. She wanted to fix everything with one good act, but life did not work like that. You could not unpour water. Her phone buzzed one more time, but this sound was different. A soft chime from the news app. She opened it and saw a new headline. "Community demands justice after diner attack." The photo showed a small group holding signs outside the Magnolia Diner. One sign read, "Dignity for All." Another read, "No Hate in Fairview." A third showed her face with a red X over it. She closed the Cons app and rubbed her eyes. She could feel a storm building in the air. It had not started yet, but the sky felt heavy and low, as if the clouds needed just one small push to open. A slow knock came at the door. Not sharp, not angry. Deliberate. Her stomach flipped. She glanced down the hall to where Ethan's room glowed a soft orange from his lamp. She moved to the door and looked through the shade. Two shapes stood on the steps, bulky in the dim light. Leather cutoffs. Patches. The glow of a cigarette tip. She did not open it. "Miss Lee," a calm male voice said from the other side. "We mean no harm. We'd like to talk." Her fingers found the lock and froze there. Another voice, deeper, steady as a drumbeat. "We want to talk about what happened to my mother." The heater clanked again and came on for a few seconds, then died, the way old machines do when they want to help, but cannot. Amber's breath shortened. She remembered the roar of motorcycles she had heard sometimes from the highway. She remembered the man at the diner who had stared at her through the window when the video had first spread. The man with the scar near his eye, and the quiet, watchful face. She backed away from the door and swallowed hard. "Who are you?" she asked. Silence for a heartbeat. Then the deep voice said, "They call me Bulldog. Most folks just know me as Kane." He did not shout. He did not threaten. He only said, in that steady way that left no space for lying, "Open the door, Miss Lee. It's time to make this right." Amber stood still, hand on the lock, heart pounding with fear, and something else she could not name yet. The day had started with a buzz, and had turned into a wave that would not stop coming. Now it stood at her door, asking to be let in. Behind her, Ethan's door clicked open. "Amber," he called quietly. "It's okay," she said, more to herself than to him. She drew a breath, turned the latch, and opened the door to face the night, and the men waiting in it. Cold air rushed in when the door opened. Two big men stood on the steps, boots muddy from the road. Their leather jackets gleamed under the porch light, patches stitched across the fronts like badges of a life she didn't understand. The taller one was broad-shouldered, his beard streaked with gray. The other hung back, quiet, watching. Amber gripped the doorframe. What do you want?" The tall man's eyes were calm, not cruel. "We're not here to hurt you," he said. "I'm Kane Jones. Folks call me Bulldog. The woman in your video, she's my mother." The world tilted for a moment. The small noises of the trailer, the clock tick, the hum of the fridge, faded. "Your mother?" He nodded. "Mrs. Thelma Jones." Her stomach dropped. I didn't know." "No," he said quietly. "You didn't. But now you do." Behind him, motorcycles glimmered at the curb, chrome catching the streetlight. She thought of all the stories she'd heard about men like this. Dangerous, wild. Kane didn't look wild. He looked tired. Tired and sure of himself. "What are you going to do to me?" she whispered. He studied her for a long second. "That depends on you." Then, softer. "You can't take back what you did, but you can make it right." Her knees trembled. "How?" "My crew runs a place called Mercy Table," he said. "We feed the hungry, the vets, folks who fell through the cracks. My mama helps out there every Sunday. You want forgiveness? Start there. 2 months of work. Or you can keep hiding." Amber stared at him. She wanted to slam the door, to tell him no, to tell him she wasn't the kind of person who could face the woman she'd hurt. But she saw Ethan's face peeking from down the hall, eyes wide, frightened. She swallowed hard. "All right," she said. "I'll do it." Kane gave a single nod. "Tomorrow, 7 a.m., don't be late." He turned and walked back to his bike. The engines roared, then rolled away, fading into the dark. Amber closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. Ethan crept closer. "Who was that?" "Someone who wants me to fix what I broke." "Are you in trouble?" She looked at him, at the fear in his young face, and forced a shaky smile. "Not the kind you think." Morning came gray and heavy. Amber woke before dawn, dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt, tied her hair back. The mirror caught her face. Pale, drawn, but her eyes looked steadier. Ethan shuffled out, rubbing his eyes. "You going now?" "Yeah, be good at school. I'll be home by dinner." He hugged her quick. "You sure it's safe?" She squeezed his shoulder. "I'll find out." The roads were quiet. Her old car coughed and rattled toward the edge of town. Mercy Table sat behind a worn-down church, a long, low building painted sky blue with a big wooden cross over the door. A hand-painted sign read, "Hot meals, warm hearts, all welcome." Amber parked beside a row of bikes. The sound of laughter and clattering pots drifted through the open door. Her palms were damp as she stepped inside. The air smelled of chili and cornbread. Volunteers moved fast, pouring soup, washing dishes, handing out sandwiches to a line of people that stretched outside. No one looked up until Kane's voice cut through the noise. "Morning, everyone. This here's Amber. She'll be helping out for a while." A few heads turned. Recognition flickered in their eyes. A murmur rolled through the room, soft but sharp. Someone whispered, "That's her." Amber kept her gaze on the floor. Kane handed her an apron. "Start at the serving line. Marcus will show you what's what." A tall man with a metal prosthetic where his left leg should have been waved from behind the counter. "Come on over," he said, voice gentle. "We'll get you sorted." She joined him. The line moved steady, people thanking her as she handed them trays. Her shoulders stayed tense, expecting someone to yell, to point, to shove their plate back. But they didn't. They just smiled, weary and grateful. During a break, Marcus offered her a cup of water. "First day's the hardest," he said. She nodded. "Feels like everyone's staring." "Maybe they are," he said, shrugging. "But stares fade faster than guilt. Keep showing up." In the corner, Kane watched her without expression, arms folded. When the lunch rush slowed, Amber sank onto a crate near the door. Her back ached, her hands smelled of onions and soap, but something inside her felt quiet. Not peace exactly, just the beginning of it. Marcus sat beside her. "You hungry? Got a pot of stew left." She hesitated. "No, I'm good." He studied her for a moment. "You can't run on empty, you know." Amber almost smiled. "Seems like that's all I've been doing." Kane walked past, wiping his hands on a towel. "Be here tomorrow," he said. 5 sharp. Breakfast shift." She nodded. As she stepped outside, the late sun hit her face. The wind carried the smell of baked bread from somewhere down the street. For the first time in weeks, she took a deep, full breath. Back in her car, she glanced toward the church. Inside that little blue building, she'd faced strangers who could have hated her, but didn't. Not yet. When she got home that night, Ethan waited at the table, books spread out. "How was it?" he asked. She thought for a moment before answering. "Hard," she said. Then, quieter. "But right." Morning came with the smell of frost and cheap coffee. Amber parked her old car behind the little blue building before the sun had fully risen. Her breath clouded in the air as she pulled her jacket tighter. The world felt still. Just the crunch of gravel under her shoes and the low hum of voices drifting from inside Mercy Table. She hesitated by the door, her fingers brushing the doorknob, heart thudding. Yesterday had been hard. Today, she feared, would be worse. Inside, the kitchen was already alive. Metal pots clanged, water hissed from faucets, and the smell of scrambled eggs filled the air. Volunteers moved like clockwork, some chopping onions, others stirring big pots of oatmeal. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing. Everyone except her. Kane stood near the stove, his back to her, sleeves rolled up, tattoos twisting along his arms. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "You're late." "It's 5:05, Amber muttered. He glanced at the wall clock. "Shift starts at 5. Then he nodded toward the counter. "Grab an apron. Start with dishes." Amber tied the apron around her waist, her fingers fumbling with the strings. The sink was piled high, mountains of plates, sticky pans, silverware caked with yesterday's stew. The hot water stung her hands, but she didn't complain. As she worked, she heard the others talking. "You see that news thing about the diner?" "Lady," one woman said in a low voice. "Yeah," another whispered. "They say she's working here now. Can you believe that?" Amber didn't look up. She scrubbed harder, pretending not to hear. After a while, Marcus came in from the back garden carrying a crate of tomatoes. His easy smile softened the edges of the tension in the room. "Morning, Amber," he said. "Didn't scare you off yet?" She gave a small shrug. "Not yet," he laughed. "Good. Stick around long enough, and even Kane might smile." Kane, standing a few feet away, didn't react. "Focus, Hill. Soup's burning." Marcus winked at Amber and went to stir the pot. By 7, the line outside had started. Through the kitchen window, Amber saw the faces. Men with tired eyes, women holding children, old veterans with their hands stuffed in their coat pockets. Some of them looked rough, but when they stepped inside, every one of them said, "Thank you." Amber's job was to fill trays. "Eggs or oatmeal?" she'd ask, her voice quiet. Some answered, some just pointed. Every few minutes, someone would thank her again, as if she was doing something extraordinary instead of spooning food. A young mother came through with a little girl who couldn't have been more than 5. The child smiled up at Amber, missing 2 front teeth. "You have pretty hair," the girl said. Amber blinked. Thanks." Her chest tightened. No one had said something kind to her in weeks. She looked down at her shaking hands and whispered, "You too, sweetheart." After the morning rush, Kane called out, "Break time, 10 minutes." Amber set her ladle down, her arms aching. She slipped outside to the back steps, where the air was crisp and smelled faintly of wet soil from Marcus's garden. She sat with her coffee, staring at the ground. A moment later, Marcus joined her. "You did good in there," he said. "I dropped a plate." "1 plate out of 500. That's a record around here." She almost smiled. Marcus leaned back, eyes on the sunrise. "You ever done this kind of work before?" "Not really," he nodded. "You'll get used to it. It's not about the food, you know. It's about showing up." "Showing up for what?" "For people who think nobody sees them." Amber was quiet for a while. "Feels strange, being here, after what I did." Marcus looked at her. "Everyone's got a past. Difference is whether you let it own you or teach you." Before she could answer, the kitchen door creaked open. Kane stood there, wiping his hands on a towel. "Break's over," he said, his tone flat. "We've got lunch prep." Marcus stood and clapped Amber on the shoulder. "See? I told you. He smiles on the inside." She followed him back inside, trying not to laugh. By noon, the kitchen felt like a furnace. Steam fogged the windows, and the air smelled of chili and cornbread. volunteers moved around each other in tight patterns, calling out orders and laughing. Slowly, Amber began to move with them, passing bowls, stirring pots, cleaning surfaces without being asked. Her shoulders relaxed for the first time in days. As they worked, snippets of conversation floated by. "I heard Thelma's coming Sunday," someone said. Amber froze. "Who?" "Thelma Jones," Marcus said softly. "Kane's mom. She volunteers once a week." Amber's stomach flipped. She still comes here?" "Every Sunday," he said. "Never misses." Amber swallowed hard, the air suddenly thick. "Does she know that I'm here?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, she knows." Kane's deep voice cut in from across the room. "Get back to work." Amber jumped, nearly spilling a bowl. She caught a glimpse of his eyes, calm but sharp, watching her closely. When the day ended, Amber scrubbed the last pan, her back sore but her mind buzzing. Outside, the sky was painted in streaks of pink and gold. She pulled off her apron, folded it neatly, and hung it on a hook by the door. Kane was locking up the pantry when she approached. "I'll be here tomorrow," she said quietly. He gave a small nod. "Good. Breakfast starts at 5 again. Don't be late." She turned to leave, but paused. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment. "Because my mama told me forgiveness is cheaper than hate." Then he turned and walked away. Amber stood there, staring at the empty kitchen. The words echoed in her chest long after he was gone. When she got home, Ethan was on the couch doing homework. "How was it today?" he asked. She hung up her jacket, her hands still smelling of dish soap. "It was better," he smiled. "See? Told you it wouldn't kill you." Amber laughed softly and ruffled his hair. "Not yet, anyway." Later that night, lying in bed, she thought of Thelma Jones. Graceful, quiet, drenched in cold water and still saying, "God bless you, child." The shame rose up again, hot and heavy. But beneath it was something else. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The Sunday morning sun spilled through the clouds like honey, soft and golden, warming the parking lot of Mercy Table. Amber stood by her car, staring at the blue building that had begun to feel less like punishment and more like a strange kind of refuge. The cold wind tugged at her sleeves, her stomach twisted into knots. Kane had said she was coming. Mrs. Thelma Jones. Amber took a long, shaky breath and stepped inside. The kitchen smelled of biscuits and gravy. Volunteers buzzed around, setting out trays and silverware. Marcus waved from the back, his easy grin the only thing that steadied her nerves. "Morning, sunshine. You look like you're about to walk into court." "Feels about right," Amber said, tying her apron. He chuckled softly. "Just be yourself." "Yeah," she muttered. "That's what got me here." Before Marcus could answer, the side door opened. The chatter dropped to a low hum. There she was. Mrs. Thelma Jones stepped inside, dressed in a pale yellow sweater and a hat the color of sunshine. She carried a basket of sweet rolls, wrapped neatly in a white towel. Her steps were slow but graceful, her back straight, her smile calm. Amber froze by the counter, hands trembling. Every sound in the room, the scrape of chairs, the hiss of the stove, faded until there was only the soft click of Thelma's shoes on the tile. Kane walked beside her, a steadying arm near her shoulder. "Mama, this is the new volunteer," he said. His voice was even, unreadable. Thelma turned her kind eyes on Amber. They were soft, like warm tea, but deep, like they saw everything at once. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Thelma smiled gently. "Well, good morning, child." Amber's throat went dry. Morning. "Glad you're here." Thelma set down her basket and began unwrapping the towel. We've got work to do. Hungry mouths don't wait on nerves. Amber blinked. You want me to help? Of course. Thelma glanced at her. That's why you're here, isn't it? It wasn't anger in her tone. It was something harder to face. Forgiveness. Amber swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, ma'am. The morning rolled forward in a blur. Thelma moved through the kitchen like sunlight, greeting each volunteer by name, humming gospel under her breath, laughing easily with the guests as they came through the line. Amber worked quietly beside her, filling trays, passing cups, wiping counters. Every now and then, she'd glance at the older woman. Thelma never looked angry. She never even looked at Amber long enough to judge her. She just was, steady, patient, full of peace. During a lull, Thelma turned toward her and said softly, You look tired, child? You sleep at all? Amber almost dropped the ladle. Yeah, some. Good. Sleep's how the soul mends. Can't pour from an empty cup. Amber didn't know how to answer. She just nodded. Across the room, Kane watched with folded arms, expression unreadable. After the last guest was served, the volunteers sat down for a quick lunch. Marcus and a few others gathered around a long wooden table. Amber hesitated, unsure if she belonged there. Come on, girl, Marcus said, pulling out a chair. Nobody bites. She sat down, folding her hands in her lap. Thelma blessed the food in a quiet voice, her words simple and kind. Then she began talking with the group about next week's menu, about a local farmer donating potatoes, about a young mother who needed a coat for her child. Amber listened in silence. Thelma's laughter filled the room, soft, full of life. For a moment, Amber forgot to be afraid. Then Thelma turned to her. You've got good hands, she said. Amber blinked. What? For work, Thelma explained. Strong, careful hands. You ought to use them for something that builds, not breaks. The words hit like a stone dropped in water. Simple but deep, rippling outward through every corner of Amber's heart. I'm trying, she said. Thelma's eyes softened. That's all any of us can do. Later, when the day wound down, Amber helped wash dishes beside Marcus. She caught her reflection in the window, hair damp with steam, face tired but calmer than before. She's not what I expected, she said quietly. Marcus looked up. Who? Mrs. Jones, he smiled. She's not what anyone expects. That woman's seen more hate than most of us ever will, but she never let it stick to her. How? Amber asked. He shrugged. Faith. Maybe just stubborn grace. Amber let the warm water run over her hands, her thoughts tangled. When she turned around, Thelma was standing in the doorway, her yellow hat in her hands. Amber froze. Thelma's eyes met hers. Child, she said gently, you can't fix what you did until you learn why you did it. The words hit harder than any shout could have. Amber opened her mouth to reply, but no words came. She just nodded, her throat burning. Thelma smiled softly, set her hat on her head, and left with Kane at her side. Amber stood there long after they were gone, the sound of running water and gospel humming echoing in her mind. When she finally stepped outside, the sun had begun to set, soft orange light spilling over the church roof. She looked up, drew a deep breath, and whispered to herself, I don't know why I did it, but I'm going to find out. For the first time in her life, the promise felt real. The next morning dawned pale and cool, with a soft mist crawling over the ground. Amber arrived at Mercy Table before sunrise, her breath forming small clouds as she carried a sack of potatoes from the back of her car. The early shift meant no crowd yet, just the quiet hum of the fridge, the scrape of metal pans, and the smell of soap from freshly cleaned counters. Kane was already there, stacking boxes of supplies along the wall. He didn't look up as she entered. "You're early." "Couldn't sleep," she said. He gave a small nod. "Good. Get the coffee going." Amber filled the pot, grateful for something simple to do. The bitter smell drifted through the kitchen, filling the empty space. She watched the slow drip, thinking of Thelma's words from the day before. "You can't fix what you did until you learn why you did it." It rolled through her mind like a song she couldn't forget. By 6:30, Marcus showed up carrying a basket of green onions from his garden. His smile came easy, the kind that broke the heavy air. "Morning, troublemaker," he said. "Kane make you haul those boxes?" She smirked faintly. "No, I'm just proving I'm not afraid of hard work." He nodded. "That's a start." The rest of the morning moved quickly. Scrubbing, chopping, stirring oatmeal, and setting out trays. The line outside the door grew as the sun climbed higher. Amber noticed things she hadn't before. The way the older men held their hats to their chests before eating. The quiet thank yous whispered by tired mothers. The way Kane always made sure the smallest kids got extra fruit cups. When a teenage volunteer dropped a whole pan of eggs, Amber rushed to help him clean up before Kane could bark orders. The boy looked mortified. "I'm sorry, ma'am." She smiled gently. "Hey, no one's perfect. I once set toast on fire. It happens." Marcus raised an eyebrow from across the room. "Once?" Amber laughed, a real laugh that startled her. After breakfast service, Marcus invited her outside to help in the small garden behind the kitchen. Rows of vegetables stretched toward the fence line. Tomatoes, peppers, beans, and a patch of mint that filled the air with cool fragrance. The sun was brighter now, turning the dew on the leaves into tiny sparks. Amber knelt in the soil beside him, pulling weeds. "I didn't know this place had a garden." "Started it 2 years ago," he said, wiping his forehead. "Gives the folks something fresh. Gives me peace." She watched him work, his movements slow but sure. The metallic glint of his prosthetic caught the light when he shifted. "Did it hurt? Losing your leg?" she asked softly. He didn't flinch. "At first. Then I realized it wasn't just my leg I lost. It was my pride. That hurt worse." Amber pressed her hand into the dirt. "Yeah," she murmured. "I get that." He gave her a look. "You ever been proud?" "Every day. Till the world told me I shouldn't be." Marcus smiled. "World's wrong sometimes." They worked in silence for a while, the earth cool beneath their hands. A breeze stirred the leaves, carrying the faint sound of church bells from down the road. Later that afternoon, as they were packing up, a group of rowdy teenagers passed by on the sidewalk. One of them, tall and sneering, pointed at Marcus's prosthetic. "Hey, Iron Man, you get that leg on sale?" The others laughed. Amber froze. Marcus said nothing, just kept stacking crates. But Amber's chest burned hot. She stepped forward. "You think that's funny?" The boys stopped, surprised. "Lady, we're just joking." "Yeah? How about I make fun of something you can't change?" The laughter died. The tallest boy muttered, "Whatever," and they walked off. Amber turned back to Marcus, her pulse still racing. "I'm sorry, I just—" He was smiling. "Don't be sorry. Just didn't expect you to have my back." She shrugged. "Guess you're rubbing off on me." He chuckled. "Careful. You might end up kind." They went back to work, but something inside her shifted. The anger that had once controlled her now burned for someone else's sake. For the first time in years, it felt like she'd used it for good. That evening, after everyone left, Kane sat outside the kitchen on the back steps, smoking a cigarette. Amber lingered near the door, unsure if she should say anything. He nodded toward the empty spot beside him. "Sit." She did. He blew out smoke and said quietly, "Heard about what happened with those kids?" She tensed. "I didn't mean to start trouble." He cut her off. "You didn't. You stood up for somebody who needed it. That's what this place is for." She looked at him. "Why do you do this, Kane? Why run a soup kitchen? You could be anywhere." He stared at the horizon for a long time. "Used to be different. Angry, violent. Thought strength meant breaking things. My mama, she kept praying for me even when I told her I didn't deserve it. One day I believed her. Now I try to make something worth her prayers." Amber's throat tightened. "She's something special." He nodded slowly. "That woman's the only reason I'm not in the ground or a cell." Then he flicked the cigarette into the gravel and looked at her. "Don't waste the pain, Amber. Turn it into purpose." She met his eyes, the weight of his words settling deep. "I'll try." Kane stood. That's all anyone can do. When Amber got home, Ethan was sitting on the couch watching TV with the volume low. "You look tired," he said. "I am," she admitted, dropping her bag. "But it's a good tired." He smiled. "They treating you okay?" "Yeah," she said, thinking of Marcus's easy laugh, Kane's quiet strength, and Thelma's forgiving eyes. "Better than I deserve." He tilted his head. "You seem different." Amber thought about it. "Maybe I am." That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the day in her head. The soil under her nails, the laughter, the quiet kindness. It wasn't redemption yet, but it was a start. For the first time in a long time, she fell asleep, smiling. The next Sunday came, dressed in soft light and birdsong. The air smelled of rain that hadn't fallen yet, fresh, full of promise. Amber woke before her alarm, heart beating fast. She'd been invited to church. By her, by the woman she'd wronged. Amber stood before the mirror, holding a simple blue dress she hadn't worn since her mother's funeral. It was the only thing in her closet that felt halfway decent. She brushed her hair 3 times more than needed, trying to make herself look like someone Thelma Jones wouldn't be ashamed to see. Ethan peeked around the doorway. "You're going to church?" "Yeah." "With her?" Amber nodded. "It's time." He hesitated, then said, "You're brave." Amber smiled faintly. "Nah, just scared in a different way." The church stood on a hill just outside town, small but full of life. Its white paint was chipped at the edges, but the bell above the steeple gleamed in the sunlight. Music drifted through the open doors, piano keys, hand claps, and a chorus of warm voices. When Amber stepped inside, every head seemed to turn. The scent of perfume, cologne, and fresh lilies filled the room. She wanted to sink into the floor. But then she saw Thelma near the front row, waving her forward with that same soft smile. Amber's hands trembled as she slid into the pew beside her. "Thank you for letting me come." Thelma patted her hand. "Child, you don't need an invitation to God's house." Amber stared at the worn Bible resting in Thelma's lap. Its cover was cracked, edges soft from decades of love. The service began. The choir sang loud and joyful, voices rising like sunlight through stained glass. The sound wrapped around Amber, both comforting and overwhelming. She wasn't used to this kind of peace, this kind of welcome. During the sermon, the pastor spoke about grace. He said, "Forgiveness isn't a reward for the good. It's medicine for the broken." The words hit Amber hard. She stared at her folded hands, tears pricking her eyes. Then the pastor said, "Sister Thelma has a few words for us today." Amber's heart stopped. Thelma stood slowly, leaning on a wooden cane, The room fell quiet as she stepped toward the front, her yellow hat catching the light. She spoke with calm strength. "Last month, many of you saw a terrible thing on the news," she began. "A woman in pain hurt me in public. Some folks told me I should press charges, demand punishment, but I asked God what He wanted me to do." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. "And He told me, forgive. Not because she deserved it, but because I needed it. Forgiveness ain't about who's wrong. It's about freeing your heart from hate." The church murmured softly, amens and sniffles. Then, to Amber's shock, Thelma turned and held out her hand. "Stand with me, child." Amber hesitated, frozen. But Thelma nodded. Slowly, trembling, Amber rose from the pew and walked to her side. The congregation whispered, but Thelma's voice rose steady above them. "This young woman," she said, "did a hurtful thing, but I see what God's doing in her life. I see change, and I choose to love her anyway." Tears spilled down Amber's cheeks. Thelma's hand was warm in hers, soft, strong, forgiving. The pastor's eyes shone as he said, "Sister Thelma, you've just given us all a sermon." The choir began to sing Amazing Grace. The sound filled the room, wrapping around Amber like a blanket she hadn't known she needed. When the song ended, Thelma leaned over and whispered, "You hungry?" Amber laughed through her tears. "Always." After church, Thelma invited her to Sunday dinner. Amber followed her to a cozy little house with flowers in every window and the smell of cinnamon in the air. Kane was already there, setting dishes on the table. "Didn't think I'd see you in a dress," he said with a rare smile. Amber blushed. "Didn't think I'd see you in church?" He chuckled. "Touché." They ate fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and cornbread so soft it melted in her mouth. Thelma told stories about her late husband, about the years she'd taught school, about Kane getting into fights as a boy and coming home with ripped jeans and guilty eyes. Amber laughed more than she had in years. Between bites, she looked around the table, Thelma's calm, Kane's quiet strength, the warmth in the room, and something inside her cracked open. For the first time, she felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When dinner ended, Thelma handed her a small jar of peach jam. "Take this, child." Amber blinked. "You made this?" Thelma nodded. "Made too much, and food's meant to be shared." She looked at her with that knowing gaze. "So is kindness." Amber's voice wobbled. "I don't know how to thank you." "Just keep showing up," Thelma said. "God ain't done with you yet." As Amber drove home, the late afternoon sun painted the sky in gold and pink. She felt lighter, like something heavy had finally loosened its grip. But parked across the street from her trailer was a car she didn't recognize. Dark, windows tinted. A man inside lifted a phone, pointed it at her car, and snapped a photo before driving off. Amber frowned, uneasy. She told herself it was nothing. Maybe just someone lost. But deep down, she felt the cold edge of worry creep back in. She didn't know it yet, but the peace she'd found that Sunday was only the calm before the storm. Monday morning came wrapped in gray clouds. Rain tapped on the windows of Amber's trailer, a soft, steady rhythm that matched the heaviness in her chest. The church service still echoed in her heart. Thelma's words, the way the congregation had stood, the sound of amazing grace. For the first time in years, Amber had gone to sleep believing she might deserve a second chance. But peace, she was learning, never stayed long. When she reached Mercy Table, the air felt different, tense, like a storm waiting to break. Marcus was outside under the awning, his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets. His easy smile was missing. "Morning," Amber said cautiously. He gave a slow nod. "Morning. What's wrong?" He hesitated, then sighed. "You didn't check your phone, did you?" "No, why?" He handed her his. On the screen was a news headline that made her stomach drop. Diner racist back in the spotlight. Old posts reveal years of hate. Underneath, there was her face, her diner uniform photo, and below it, screenshots of her old social media posts. Comments she'd written when she was 20, when her heart was still bitter and hard. Sarcasm, anger, ugly jokes she'd once thought were harmless. They were now being shared everywhere. Amber's throat went dry. I deleted those years ago. Internet doesn't forget, Marcus said softly. She scrolled through hundreds of comments. Fake apology. Playing the victim. Once a racist, always a racist. Her hands shook. I've been working here for weeks. People saw I changed. Doesn't that count for something? Marcus didn't answer. She looked up and saw Kane watching from the doorway, his face dark as thunder. Come inside, he said quietly. Inside, the kitchen was silent. Volunteers who once smiled at her now turned away. 2 of them whispered, their eyes sharp with judgment. Thelma wasn't there yet, and the emptiness of her absence hit hard. Amber tied her apron, forcing herself to focus on work. But her hands moved without purpose. Every clang of a pot sounded louder. Every murmur felt like a knife. Kane leaned against the counter, arms folded. You got something to say for yourself? Amber swallowed hard. Those posts were years ago. I was angry, stupid. Doesn't matter how long ago. People see it now. I know, she whispered. But I'm not that person anymore. He looked at her for a long moment, his jaw tight. You better hope that's true. Then he turned and walked out. Her eyes stung, but she kept moving, pouring soup, washing dishes, anything to stay busy. When Thelma finally arrived, the room seemed to still. Everyone turned, waiting for her reaction. She walked straight to Amber, her face calm. I saw the news, she said. Amber's chest clenched. I'm sorry, I swear I... Thelma raised a hand gently. I know. You were lost then. But the world's gonna test you now, child. Don't run from it. I don't know if I can handle it again, Amber said, her voice breaking. You can, Thelma said softly. Because grace doesn't quit when it gets hard. Amber felt tears spill, but before she could speak, shouts came from outside. Kane rushed to the door. What's going on? Through the window, Amber saw a crowd forming, people with signs, cameras flashing. No hate in Fairview, one sign read. Another, harsher. Shut down Mercy Table. Reporters shouted questions. Kane Jones, why are you harboring her? Doesn't this charity support racists now? Kane's face went red. That's enough, he roared, stepping outside. Marcus grabbed his arm. Don't, brother. They want a show. But Kane shook him off and strode into the crowd. A man in a gray jacket sneered. Tell your mama she's siding with trash. Kane's fist flew before he could stop it. The man stumbled back, blood on his lip. Cameras flashed. Amber ran outside. Kane, stop! He turned, breathing hard, rage burning in his eyes. Thelma appeared at the doorway, her voice cutting through the noise. Kane Jones! He froze. She stepped forward, calm as ever. You come back inside before you ruin what God's trying to fix. He obeyed, jaw tight, fists trembling. The reporters backed away, murmuring into their microphones. Inside, the volunteers whispered among themselves. The atmosphere that had once been warm now felt fractured. By evening, news trucks crowded the street. City officials called for Mercy Table to suspend operations for safety reasons. Kane threw his cap across the counter. They're shutting us down. Amber's knees gave out. Because of me. Marcus crouched beside her. You didn't cause their hate. You just made them look at it. Tears blurred her vision. I tried so hard to change. Thelma put a hand on her shoulder. And you did. But sometimes the world don't see the heart, only the headline. That night, Amber packed her bag in silence. Ethan sat at the table, watching her. "You're leaving?" he asked. "They don't need me there right now," she whispered. "I just make things worse." Ethan's voice cracked. "You can't run forever." She forced a small smile. "I'm not running. I'm just trying to breathe." She hugged him tightly before walking into the rain. The road stretched ahead, slick and lonely. Her old car's headlights cut through the dark as thunder rolled in the distance. She thought about everything: the diner, Thelma's forgiveness, the laughter in the garden, the sound of church music. It all felt like another life. As rain beat against the windshield, her phone buzzed on the seat beside her. A text from an unknown number. "You'll never be forgiven. We'll make sure of it." Her grip tightened on the wheel. Lightning split the sky, bright and brief. She whispered to herself, "God, if you're still with me, I need to see it." Then, through the blur of rain, she saw a flicker of headlights approaching, a car pulling into a small roadside diner ahead. She slowed, drawn to the warm yellow glow through the windows. She didn't know it yet, but inside that diner waited the one person she thought she'd never see again, Mrs. Thelma Jones. And with her, the truth Amber still needed to hear. Amber sat in the small roadside diner, rain dripping from her jacket. The doorbell jingled, and in walked Thelma, her yellow hat shining like sunlight in the gray room. She slid into the booth without a word, setting an old photograph on the table. Her late husband standing beside a young white man in uniform. "That man saved my husband's life," Thelma said softly. "Your father, wasn't he?" Amber's breath caught. "Maybe that's why God brought you to me," Thelma whispered. "Not for punishment, for grace." Amber's tears fell. "Then I'll make it right." "You already started, child." The next morning, Amber returned to Mercy Table. Protesters still crowded the street, their chants sharp in the air. She walked through them, trembling but unbroken, and climbed onto a wooden crate near the door. Cameras turned. "I did a terrible thing," she began, voice shaking. "I hurt someone who showed me nothing but kindness. I can't erase it, but I can change who I am." The crowd quieted. "I'm not asking for sympathy," she said. "I'm asking for a chance to do good with what I've learned." For a long moment, silence held. Then Marcus stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We forgive you," he said simply. Thelma smiled through tears. "Grace won, child." Kane nodded. "Welcome home." And just like that, the noise outside turned to applause. Days later, the protests faded. The Mercy Table reopened, busier than ever. People of every color worked side by side, laughter echoing where anger once lived. Amber was hired full-time, leading outreach programs and helping those who'd once judged her. Marcus tended the garden again. Kane smiled more often, and Thelma hummed gospel songs as she served soup. The community that had once divided began to heal. Together. One evening, Amber looked around the bustling kitchen and whispered, "Thank you, Lord, for second chances." And in the warmth of that room, Grace felt like home. 6 months later, warm sunlight streamed through the windows of Mercy Table. The kitchen buzzed with laughter, the clatter of spoons, and the smell of fresh bread. Amber moved along the serving line with quiet confidence, ladling soup into bowls. The once-ashamed waitress had become the heart of the place. Beside her, Thelma wore her yellow hat, humming a gospel tune that filled the air like a soft prayer. Marcus arranged baskets of vegetables from the garden, while Kane joked with the new volunteers, his deep voice full of pride. Ethan carried trays to guests, his teenage grin bright and hopeful. Amber paused as a young woman stepped into line, muttering something sharp about those people. The old Amber might have snapped. Instead, she smiled. "Sit down, sweetheart," she said gently. "You look hungry." The girl froze, then nodded and found a seat. Thelma's humming grew stronger, and Amber joined her, their voices blending in a melody of peace. The kitchen glowed in golden light, every corner alive with warmth. Amber looked around, the faces, the laughter, the unity, and her chest swelled. Forgiveness wasn't just something given to her anymore. It was something she gave. In that sunlight, surrounded by love, Amber finally understood. Grace was home. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.